I did think this episode was very excellent, but it did have the drawbacks of doing the usual stuff, of just drawing on too many other sources, especially The Matrix again. But this time there was a lot of Batman. So it could just be me, but the whole speech about you gotta get back up. Don't stay defeated. You gotta get back up. To me, that felt a lot of Batman Begins. That's sort of the speech that Bruce is given. So to me, it seemed like the Nolans are basically self cannibalizing themselves at this point. They're just drawing upon their own canon, which is fine. But I did think the Dark Knight thing at the end with Hale and Caleb was just a little bit too much. Maybe I'm being too overboard, but it did seem to me like, that city Joker told you you were alone. Yeah, they don't want your utopia paradise. They're willing to commit suicide rather than be in your world. And of course, Charlotte Hale, or whatever we're going to call her, got really mad and finally killed Caleb. So the clone revelation I thought was fairly interesting in the way that she's using these copies to understand the outliers. But I'm still a little confused. It seems like we have two outlier theories. One that Caleb somehow caused the outlier, so therefore to study him like a lab rat. Or it could be the outlier is sort of just something that the hosts and the humans are doing on their own. They're kind of rejecting the programming or rejecting the propaganda. So I don't know if they're retconning the outlier. It seemed a little fuzzy in that area. Again, I don't think that was the main point, but I would prefer that they remain a little bit more consistent with their own canon. But again, this is Westworld, so they're constantly replaying things. So the good parts and bad parts. Well, I thought the Frankie section was pretty good in terms of her interactions with Bernard. She was, I think, appropriately paranoid about what Bernard was up to. And what is Bernard's plan in terms of making copies of them? I don't know. He's going to create a invincible droid army to face off against Hale. I don't know. It just seemed really, really flimsy and murky. I did like that Frankie was not stupid and she caught on to the whole scheme. The revelation, though, of Bernard not being human, I thought was a little bit pointless. It's like whether he ultimately dies, he doesn't care about that. It felt kind of slightly weak that, oh, we now know for sure Bernard is not who he appears to be. It's like, okay, I don't think that advanced the story very much. But nevertheless, I do think the actress who played Frankie and her reactions were pretty sharp. However, I do think the beginning to set up the twist with Jay was a little overdone. I mean, I understand the young Jay doesn't want to be part of this family or whatever, but I thought that was a little bit too explicit and on the nose. I wish they found a much more subtle way, but it did work. You know, the symbolism with the radio and the way Caleb calls out to his daughter, finding out apparently Frankie's nickname is Cookie. It did make sense, but I don't know. It could have been done more artfully or with a better set of metaphors. But for what it was a little crude, but it did get the job done. But I think the real question here is where is the man in black? Where's Christina? They've just been magically out of the story for no reason. And I felt that was a little unsatisfying. And to me, it is a really big puzzle now. If when we see William again, is it going to be human William? Will it be host William? Will the Williams team up against Hale? They're sort of stretching out the story again. This time in a good way. I did think with episode 5, it was elongated for no good reason. Here, it felt the elongation was properly done. It mostly made sense why they spent the time they did. In fact, I wish this had a couple of more minutes because, again, they really utilized the time very efficiently, very powerfully, and very well. So when it was kind of stretching things out with Caleb breaking out of whatever you want to call it, I guess the clone prison complex he was in, you wish they spent a little bit more time with these clones. We learned a little bit more about them because that one clone that sacrificed himself basically so Caleb had a chance, we barely knew these clones. I wish we spent a little bit more time and they became a little bit more distinct and specific, and that would have made the sacrifice moment a lot more powerful. It is realistic. They didn't have a lot of time together, but I wish they did something with the editing or just the way it was framed because it was a very powerful moment, but I felt it could have just been done a whole lot better. And that's the basic verdict of this episode. It seemed near perfect, but there was just something there that didn't go through enough steps to really reach total outright perfection. But I do understand they've painted themselves into a corner because Hale is kind of like this weirdo false god in her reality, and she's bored. And I understand she needs to be boring. That's part of the design of the plot and of the season. But nevertheless, it's far more interesting to see people oppose her or for her to take over. But when she's in power, it just feels a little stale. So I wonder how they're going to really rectify that with the final two episodes. Of course, we know probably she's going to lose at least some power. I don't know if she's going to lose all the power, but just trying to have her perspective is valuable. But it did feel like it just dragged the story down for no reason. So that was a little frustrating. They don't explain how Maeve is the super weapon. I can understand we need a cliffhanger, but a few more details would have been helpful. Here it just felt like we spent the whole time just getting to Maeve, to be Maeve again. Okay, but why is Maeve so valuable? You're gonna have to tune in next episode. This was a pretty near perfect episode, but it did feel like they were just setting up kind of false cliffhangers for no reason, like The Force Awakens. Like, are we gonna spend any time with Luke? Is he gonna say anything? No, you're gonna have to watch the next movie for that. Are we going to get a little bit more details about how this is all working? Because one of the things that was frustrating with the last episode, which they solved here, was how did they infiltrate the city? Okay, that was resolved, but they're using guns. This is the far future. They don't have lasers? It just seems their equipment is a little too low level. I understand they're rebels, but some of the world building details feel just a little bit too forced. So hopefully the final two episodes will give us a stronger resolution because a lot of stuff was well set up. The time we spent with the characters, very well acted, and for the most part, the directing and editing was very strong. My only really one major complaint has been the White Walkers. What exactly are the limits of their power? How indestructible are they? How intelligent are they? Wow, they seem really weak at certain points. I wish that was explained more fully. Also, what is their purpose? Are they just there to be guards? Or are they there to be companions? How do they know a danger is lurking by? That beginning scene was very iffy for me. They just noticed one person was a threat, another person was not a threat. How can they tell these things? How sensitive are their, whatever you want to call it, their perceptions? A lot of great stuff, but they have left a lot of world building details. It's filled with a lot of tension. Hopefully, this will all be explained competently because they've done a good job so far where the flashbacks have hooked up and synced up with the former seasons and not really disrupted the stories. I'm a little fearful they are going to pull just one too many major twists, and it's going to be like, that doesn't quite fit the earlier story, but we're going to have to wait and see. But they've gained my confidence. So at least two-thirds of the season has been pretty strong. Only one genuinely weak episode. And I have high expectations, but maybe we should moderate that expectations going forward.